Hello friends, it's Candace and welcome to my YouTube channel. In today's video we're going to talking about we're gonna be talking about how you probably have a blowout. Okay, maybe not that specific, but we're going to talk about tattoo blowouts. What are they and what causes them, pretty much. Let me introduce myself. I am, like I said, Candace. I'm a tattoo artist. If you want to check out any of my work, you can check out my Instagram. It's linked in the description, but it's at Chromatic Sauce. But anyway, let's just get right into it. What is a tattoo blowout? Basically, a blowout is when the ink is just injected too deep into the skin. You can easily notice it and identify it if you see kind of a bluish gray haze around a line of a tattoo. That's a blowout. You can also notice blowouts sometimes not with the whole line, but sometimes within a line. You might notice in your tattoo it goes like a regular thickness and then there's like a big black dot on one spot. That's a blowout. Too much ink, probably a little too deep in one spot for one reason or another. We'll get into that. If you see me looking down, I'm looking at my notes so I can stay on track a little bit. A blowout is easily seen when you notice that the edges of a tattoo blur out. So the ink is not where it was initially placed or intended to be. A blowout is when the tattoo is just not as crisp as it was. I don't know if that makes sense. I'll probably put a couple pictures over here. I don't want to like call any artist out, but I do want you to like understand. And while you shouldn't expect a blowout, it's kind of a part of getting tattoo at some point or another, you know, like it just happens sometimes. Your tattoo artist's human, you're human, there's so many variables that can cause this. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like these types of videos, because I plan to do many more. But anyway, let's just get into what actually causes a tattoo blowout. So like I said a little earlier, a blowout is caused when the ink goes too deep into the skin. This can happen during the lining or shading, and it can happen for a variety of different reasons. I would say mostly to do with the artist's fault, but there's many reasons. Let's get into it. The first reason, and like I would try to put fault more on the artist than the client, so I kind of would lean into that. And if we're saying it's anyone's fault, in this first scenario it's more the artist's fault in my opinion, but that is if the artist is a little bit too heavy-handed. Some artists, in my opinion, don't care about what they do so much. So if the tattoo artist is going too hard, it doesn't necessarily mean fast tattoo artists are bad or anything like that. I'm talking about a certain type of tattoo artist, like where they're just going too hard. They don't care about the client. They don't care about the outcome of the tattoo. And during this process, they're probably pressing too hard at some points, blowing out the tattoo because they don't care what it looks like when it heals. Because usually blowouts don't look too bad the day of. Like it looks like what you wanted. And the blowouts are going to arise weeks, months, even years down the road. That's the test of a really good tattoo. So yeah, if the artist is a little bit heavy-handed in a certain circumstance, that might be more likely to cause a blowout. In the sense of a careless tattoo artist who's heavy-handed type of thing. So hand in hand with that is a blowout can happen if the client moves. Now, I'm gonna swing it into an artist who's extremely heavy-handed and doesn't care about their client or the outcome of the tattoo might be causing excess pain. Now, like I said, a tattoo blowout is when the ink is too deep into the skin. If you can imagine a tattoo needle going deeper into the skin than it's meant to, is probably gonna hurt a little bit more. And what happens to the client when they hurt a little bit more, they're more likely to squirm and move around because they're in pain, unnecessary pain. Now, like some clients move and it's a reflex. Sometimes like some things can't be helped, but what can be helped is tattooing too hard, too aggressively, and too deep at points to cause the client to move. And then the client moving, technically, this part's not blaming the client at all because the artist is being a little bit too aggressive. They're like, how can you tolerate such pain? But the client moving doesn't contribute to making the tattoo look better. And sometimes that can contribute to the artist holding the client down a little bit more and like drilling in a little bit harder, trying to just get the tattoo done and in there, because they're fed up. They don't care. Now they're even more annoyed because you won't sit still. So this is a real thing. I mean, it happened to my sister. I didn't do it to her, but it happened with her thigh tattoo because she was a little bit shaky and the artist just went in, and that tattoo was a lot more scarred. The lines are way fatter than they were when they were fresh. It doesn't look good because the tattoo went probably too hard in the first place. And then when she started shaking, the tattoo artist just drilled it in and didn't care. And it hurt so bad because it was done too deep, like it wasn't done very well, in my opinion. Her opinion too. So that's sort of like, that's still the artist's fault. That's still the artist's fault of being too heavy-handed and causing pain, and then client movement can cause more blowouts. Now let me explain how a client moving on their own, like even a tattoo artist who's very light-handed, they really care, whoever it is, they really care about how the tattoo turns out. Sometimes a bad tattoo or a tattoo blowout can happen because the client's moving too much. Now picture this. I'm getting an arm tattoo, right? I don't have any. But if I'm getting an arm tattoo and I'm talking with my friends who I brought with me, a lot of people talk with their hands. A lot of people like laugh when they're talking to friends. And while you may be trying to keep your arm still moves when the rest of your body moves. So it's very important to try to stay as still as possible. Because like even when you don't realize it, even like wiggling your toes could make your arm move. Or even if you're getting a foot tattoo, your arms moving around moves your entire body. So imagine you're trying to draw on someone's arm and they're talking and their arm moves. You know, like if you're drawing with a Sharpie, the Sharpie might like make a line going a way you didn't want. A similar thing can happen with a tattoo artist. So that's why we say to stay still, because we don't want to mess up. We want you to have the tattoo that you want, and we want to be proud of it, and we want it to look good for you forever. But if you're moving too much, a certain movement could bring your arm up while the tattoo needle is in your skin, and guess what? If your arm goes up, what happens? The needle's going to go deeper in the skin than was intended. While an artist might have things in place that they do like mentally or physically to make sure that things like that don't happen, we're just humans. It's not a perfect world. Like not everything happens as perfectly as you imagine. So staying as still as possible and not moving so that you don't accidentally jerk up into the needle, causing a blowout. Everything helps to prevent a blowout. You know what I mean? Like the artist can like try their best to prevent it, but there's two people getting this tattoo done. You know what I mean? Do whatever you can to not move during the tattoo. Try not to tense up, like when the needle hits your skin, try not to tense up and like jerk, because that's gonna affect the way your tattoo looks. Not only with shaky lines, but possibly blowouts as well, which can be harder to fix and harder to look good over time when they're blowing out and blurring more and more in your skin. So after that, I would say the next most common reason for a blowout is a tattoo artist being inexperienced. So a big part of tattooing is making solid, clean lines, you know, like a straight line. Some needles taper a little bit at the tip. So if you go a little too shallow or too deep, it's going to be thin or thick. That's even true with needles that don't taper at the tip, but even more true with those ones, especially when you leave the first day. So basically, a very important thing tattoo artists must learn is to control their needle depth. If I'm doing a straight line and I go too deep or too shallow on one part, you're going to have a straight line. Even if I can get the line so straight, if I'm too shallow on one part, there's not even going to be a line there by the time it heals, or it's going to heal like light gray, if at all. There might be some spots that are like perfectly done, but if I'm struggling with my needle depth, I'm going to be going too shallow and too deep. So sometimes whole sections of line can be a little bit too deep into the skin, and that can cause uneven, thick lines, thinner lines. the thicker part of the lines are going to blur a lot more over time, while the thin lines are going to disappear more over time. Even the normally done part of the lines are going to blur a little bit over time, but I would say that kind of think of it as like the blowout part of the line is going to expand and grow like 3 times as fast, or like 3 times as thick, if that makes sense. The main thing that's going to cause issues like that is bad needle depth. Like, it's not just, oh, you draw a line. That's why scratcher tattoos are so bad, because there's lines that are falling out, there's lines that are kind of there, and then there's lines that are just like too deep. It's obvious it's too deep because you can see that gray haze even on the first day, and then they're just going to get thicker and thicker and thicker. And then especially if it's a smaller tattoo, that smaller tattoo is not going to be anything once those blown out thin lines get as thick as they're going to be, even in a couple years, sometimes even within the year. I think I have a picture of, I'm going to try to zoom in so it's not calling out any artist, but I feel like it's a good example of what blowout looks like fresh, and how thin the line was, and how fat it got in just a year. Because I feel like it's a good example. And then if you know what a blowout kind of looks like fresh, you know how to look at artists' work a little bit more critically. And besides that, are there things that make you more likely to get a blowout? I sort of was like hinting at this a little earlier with the thin lines. So picture this. A bed of nails, right? People walk on a bed of nails. I don't know if I would do it. But the idea of a bed of nails is that you can step on a whole bed of nails pointy side up, and it doesn't pierce through your foot. If you can picture stepping on one nail sticking up, it's going to go straight through your foot. If you can picture stepping on even 2 nails, it'll probably go straight through your foot. The more nails you have poking up, the less it's going to automatically stab into your foot, if that makes sense, because of the way your weight is spread out on each of the nails. I'm not trying to explain science to you. I understand it, but I don't know if I know it enough to explain it in a scientific way. But basically, one nail is going to go straight through, and then the more you get, the more likely that it won't even puncture the skin at all. So like, if you have a needle grouping with 18 teeny tiny needles, that's going to be a really thick fat line, but the artist has to make sure that it's in the skin at a deep enough way. And then the smaller the needle grouping, there's 14 round liner, 9 round liner, 7 round liner, 5 round liner. That's how many needles are in the groupings. So an 18 round liner is harder to get into the skin, also potentially harder to blow out automatically, because you're the one putting it in the skin. The smaller the grouping, the easier it is to put it in the skin. Is this making sense? So if a needle grouping is a little bit too easy to get into the skin, and especially if you're a little inexperienced with needle depth, and sometimes even if you are experienced with like keeping your needle depth straight, those really thin lines, like a 1 liner, a 3 liner, even a 5 liner, they're much easier to put into the skin, and that means much easier to accidentally put too deep into the skin, and then you just got a line that you want it to be super thin, and then it looks like it's done by an 18 round liner like 10, 15 years later. You know what I mean? So thinner lines, the thinner the line you want, depending on how experienced your artist is, the more likely, even if it's not the whole line, it might just be like a couple spots, or like speckly, where like the line disappears and then the next part is just thick and fat, because thin lines are a little bit easier to blow out than thicker lines. They can all be blown out. Let's not get it twisted. Even shaders can blow out some tattoo ink. It all matters how deep you go, but it's easier to blow out with less needles. Okay, the next thing that sort of makes it easier, more automatic that a blowout might happen, is if someone has thinner skin, or if it's like skin stretched over a bone, which kind of goes with thinner skin. Basically, any spots that you have thinner skin, like it's a little bit tougher here, a little thinner here, it's easier to blow out. Like I was saying, you have to keep your needle at a certain depth. And if the skin is a little bit too thin, it's easier to put the needle too deep, if that makes sense. Is it all making sense? Comment down below. So the thinner the skin, the easier it is, the more likely it is that you could get a blowout. Behind your knee, like the knee ditch versus the top of your thigh, that skin is different. The thinner the skin, the more likely it will blow out. And then wrapping around a bone is like, I don't know how to explain, I don't know how to give an analogy to that, but wrapping around a bone, if it's on an elbow, on knuckles, on your hand, there's tricky areas of the body that are just generally more likely to blow out than other spots. It's still possible anywhere. Like, you can still get a blowout on the easy to tattoo areas. My sister's tattoo that I said was like kind of blown out and not that good, that's on her thigh. Like, that is such an easy place to tattoo, and she still got blowouts. So it's mostly the artist. It can be the inexperience of the artist. It can be a careless artist. But there are things that contribute, and thinner skin, bony skin, that's all possibilities. And then going in with thinner skin, unfortunately, can tend to be older skin. The older you get, the thinner your skin kind of gets. Like, you lose a little bit of elasticity, you lose a little bit of collagen. Your skin just gets thinner as you age. And so, like, me getting an arm tattoo right now is less likely to blow out than me getting an arm tattoo 40 years from now. Because my skin is just going to get thinner, and the thinner the skin, that's the less amount of wiggle room that you'll have to get that needle in the right exact spot. Way easier to go just a little bit too deep when it's thin skin. Some people who are a little bit older, an artist might not want to do a tattoo on you just because they don't know if they can successfully do it in a way that's going to look good. They don't want to give you a bad tattoo. And unfortunately, sometimes it's because of the skin. I haven't refused anyone, but I'm sure it happens. While there's many things you can avoid, you can look in the artist's work, you can look at healed stuff, you can do your part yourself to avoid getting a blowout. You can try. The whole point is like trying to find an artist that has good work out there that you could see. I don't see blowouts anywhere, like, or I can't spot it, so it's good. And sometimes, even if they do have blowouts, if you like it, whatever you like, really. But there's things you can look out for to try to avoid getting a blowout from a tattoo artist. But sometimes blowouts just happen. They can happen to any artist or client if you're not careful, if you're not looking for who you're going to, if you're not careful while sitting in the chair, if the artist is careless or inexperienced. Like, anything could happen to cause a blowout, and sometimes it's kind of nobody's fault. It's just important to be mindful that they can happen. I would have a blowout if I wanted, but there's some things, like, I have blowouts in some of my tattoos, and while it's not my favorite aspect of the tattoo, I know that can be a part of getting tattooed, and there's just some things that you have to accept. Like, I'm not gonna get tattoo removal just because I got a little blowout, you know what I mean? We can talk a little bit more about that in another video if you're interested. Please comment any questions or thoughts you have about this video. Anything you want to say, let me know. In a future video, I would be happy to dive deeper into solutions for tattoo blowouts. Is the only solution cover up? Can you get laser? Can you keep the tattoo with laser? All that jazz. Let me know if you would like a video about that in the comments below. Anything specifically you would like to see or hear me mention in that video, definitely let me know in the comments below. And if you have any other video ideas, feel free, talk to me. Let me know what you're thinking. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I love ya. See you in the next one. Bye. It's hot in here, and I'm just stressed out. I'm like, frick. I'm just trying to be fashionable, but like, this is not really. Oh, and I gotta dye my hair, but I won't film that. But yeah. Anyway, bye.